All right, let's talk about Meghalaya. Lately, it feels like they've been on a massive spending spree, right? Announcing all these big projects, scholarships. It looks great on paper. But an analysis we're looking at today asks a really tough question. Is this real progress, or is the state basically mortgaging its future? So, yeah, today we're going to dig into the numbers and see what's really going on.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It all really kicked off back in November 2025. It was just this flurry of announcements from the government. You had a new 5-year plan for food security, a big deal signed with Telangana. They even bought a new building in Bangalore for 28 crore. And to top it off, a huge release of scholarship money. I mean, you look at all that, and on the surface, it looks fantastic. Like things are really booming, right?
But the author of the piece we're drawing from sees it completely differently. And they use this incredibly sharp analogy to make their point. I see the bailiff walking up the driveway while the master of the house is out buying new curtains. Wow. I mean, that really paints a picture, doesn't it? It suggests that while all this flashy spending is happening, a much deeper financial crisis could be right around the corner. This single quote, it just perfectly sets up the central question we need to tackle. And that central question is, the elephant in the room. How can the state possibly afford all of this? It just doesn't seem to add up. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to investigate let's call it the magical math behind Meghalaya's spending spree and try to figure out where this money is really coming from. Okay, and when you look at the basic finances, the mismatch is just staggering. It's right here. The state brings in about 4,788 crore rupees from its own taxes. But look at the other side. Total spending is over 27,000 crore. Think about that for a second. For every single rupee the state earns itself, it's spending almost 6. That is a huge gap. It's just not sustainable. So that massive gap we just talked about, that has a name. It's the fiscal deficit. In this case, it's almost 2,000 crore rupees. And look, this isn't just some boring accounting term. It's a real shortfall. It's money the state doesn't have but needs to spend. And there's really only one way to cover that kind of hole. You borrow it. You take on debt. And as we're about to see, what you do with that borrowed money, that's the real story here. All right, so to really get at the heart of the author's concerns, let's zoom in on a couple of those big announcements we mentioned earlier. We're going to look at the scholarships and that new building in Bangalore. They really tell a tale of two different priorities. Okay, first up, the scholarship money. 130 crore rupees released for students. Now, this was presented as this amazing gift to the youth of the state, right? A huge investment in their future. And honestly, who's going to argue with helping students? It sounds like a total no-brainer. But again, the analysis we're looking at pushes back. It says, hold on a second. We have to ask the tough question. Given the state's finances that we just saw, where did this 130 crore actually come from? Was it really a gift paid for with extra cash lying around? Or is it something else entirely? And this is where the author's point really hits home. They argue that this money was almost certainly borrowed. So let's do the math. You borrow 130 crore. Let's say you get a pretty standard interest rate, maybe 8% over 15 years. By the time you pay it all back, you're not paying 130 crore. The total repayment swells to almost 234 crore rupees. That's over 100 crore just in interest. And that leads us to this really powerful conclusion from the source material. We have not given them a gift, we have given them a loan and called it a scholarship. Oof! The point here is that today's scholarship becomes tomorrow's debt. And guess who's going to be paying it back with all that interest? The very students receiving the money today as future taxpayers. So it's not really a gift, it's just passing the bill to the next generation. Okay, now let's talk about that office building in Bangalore. A 28 crore rupee purchase. The author puts the spending side by side with a really heartbreaking statistic from back home. According to the National Family Health Survey, almost half, 46.5% of children under 5 in Meghalaya are stunted because of malnutrition. And the analysis points out that the same 28 crore rupees could have completely revamped 56 primary health centers. It's a really stark comparison of where the priorities lie, isn't it? So this whole pattern, borrowing money to pay for these big, flashy projects, it points to a much, much deeper issue, according to the author. And the argument they make is that the official debt figures we all see, that's just the tip of the iceberg. What's hiding beneath the surface is way more worrying. And a huge piece of evidence for this comes from the CAG, the Comptroller and Auditor General. These are basically the top government accountants, the official auditors for the whole country. And their report found that in just 1 year,
The state failed to collect over 1,500 crore rupees in revenue it was owed. Think about that. Money from mining, from excise duties, just not collected. The author's point is brutal. The state is borrowing money because it's failing to collect the money it's already owed. It's a direct line.
So you might be asking, aren't there limits on how much a state can borrow? And you'd be right. So how do they get around it? Well, the analysis points to this, let's call it a clever accounting trick called off-budget borrowings. It's pretty simple, actually. The government gets state-owned companies to take out the loans instead. Then the government guarantees those loans. The clever part? It doesn't show up on the state's main budget. It's a way to hide the true amount of debt.
And here's that iceberg we were talking about. You can see it right here. The official state debt is already pretty high, about 43% of the state's entire economy, but that's just the part you can see. Below the water, our source points to almost 3,000 crore rupees in this hidden debt, these contingent liabilities. So when you add it all up, the state's actual financial exposure, the real risk, it's way, way higher than the official numbers would have you believe.
Okay, so after painting this pretty grim picture of rising hidden debt, you might think the story ends there. But it doesn't. The author doesn't just leave us with despair. Instead, they pivot to this really powerful call to action. It's a call for every single citizen to basically become an auditor of the state's finances. And they lay out 4 really concrete things you can do. 1, demand a public dashboard, a real-time website showing where the money is coming from and where it's going. 2, every time you hear about a new freebie or a new scheme, ask the most important question: is this being paid for with our taxes or with more debt? 3, use your right to information. The RTI is a powerful weapon to get the real facts. And 4, and this is the big one, when election time comes around, don't just listen to promises. Demand to see a balance sheet. And we're left with this final, really provocative thought from the source material. The author takes a famous old saying about saving money and flips it on its head to deliver a warning. They borrow what they can, and what they borrow they spend. 'Tis the stone that will turn our gold into lead. It's a chilling warning, really, about what happens when a state chooses to live on borrowed money and flashy appearances. It's an argument that this path in the end doesn't create value, it destroys it. Definitely something to think about.